Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. So, today I have a very special treat, my very good and beautiful friend, Chantelle Raven. I obviously don't get people on the podcast very often, but I couldn't resist having a conversation with my very intelligent, very powerful friend. So, I originally thought that, Chantelle and I are doing an event together, and I was reading her bio, and she's studied philosophy, she's studied law. You can read more about her. I'll post links below so you can get more details on her bio so we can hop straight into it. And I was like, oh, I would love to have a debate, a philosophical debate with someone, because I tend to be quite a skeptic in my philosophical framework. And that can actually rub a lot of people the wrong way, but they don't really have the language or the experience to debate with me about it. So I was thinking that Chantelle would be an amazing person to have that conversation with. So I put a note out to our community to get questions to debate over. And we got so many questions. We got maybe like 15, 20 questions, but they're all kind of questions that are maybe more like a Q&A. So the debate might be a little bit more of a Q&A with Chantelle and Ava, but we'll see how we go. And how are you today, Shan?
I'm fantastic, darling.
Nice, good.
Especially now I'm on here with you.
Yes, we had to have like 10 minutes before we recorded just to like laugh and giggle and just talk about, our debauchery and all kinds of things. So yeah, we've already chatted, but how do you feel about just jumping straight into the questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sweet. So the first question we got was, twin flames, have you met yours? And I don't know what that really refers to. So I thought I'd get you to start with that one, Shan.
Yeah, so I've read a lot of different things about twin flames, and I kind of understood some of it. Some of it was really esoteric and I didn't get it. And I've never had a felt sense of what that is until my current relationship with Matisse. And wow, I'm like, okay, I get the twin flame thing. This guy is definitely my twin flame. And I remember we made love once, and one of the many times we've made love. One of the reasons I know he's my twin flame is because we make love at least twice a day. Any man who's my twin flame needs to make love to me at least twice a day. So anyway, we made love, and after we made love, I was in this beautiful stillness, bliss state, and I saw us as two flames. And I could feel the power of our souls coming together, and actually our capacity to keep burning into a remembering of who we really are, and keep burning into a remembering of the love between us. And I haven't ever had an equal in that. So anytime stuff comes up between us, we just fucking burn with so much self-awareness and self-responsibility. Anytime something comes up in our own lives separate to each other, the same thing. And in terms of our energy and what we bring to life, that seeker energy that is willing to burn through the identity to remember, there's such an alignment there. So the flame part, I can just feel so potently with him. And then in terms of the twin part, I continually am in awe of how aligned we are in the centers that to me are very important to feel into a complete yes when in a relationship. So heart, consciousness, and animal. So, consciousness is the values that we hold, the spiritual tradition that we're held under, our commitment to, for me, commitment to the path. And I've just got 100% alignment with him in that. We just share so many of the same ideals and values. And then we're also different enough that we inspire each other, which is also important. And then heart, it's so beautiful to just feel a level of communication that has a deep vulnerability as the main thread that's weaving the communication, rather than who's right or who's wrong. And, sometimes, of course, stuff can get thick, but it just moves with such ease and grace because of that vulnerability and the willingness for both of us to just see what's fair and meet each other's needs when it's calling for that. And then the animal, as I said, is definitely a 100% yes. So that's my take on twin flames.
Thanks for sharing intimately about your relationship. I think that's going to be a treat for everyone to hear. So are you saying that a twin flame is kind of like a soulmate? What's the difference?
Yeah, so I think soulmate is anyone who our soul has a contract with, that we're meant to get together with and learn lessons from. And I've got a lot of soulmates. Every partner I've had have been long relationships that have felt like this soulmate connection. But it's different. There's not that 100% alignment, and there's not that flame that's just burning and remembering the commitment to that.
Yeah.
And it's, there's been remnants of that, or there's been senses of that, but not to the authentic degree that I can feel it with Matisse.
Yeah. Yeah. Seeing the relationship evolve, everything that you're saying, I'm totally resonate with, in that I'm seeing that as an outsider as well, in such an unlikely relationship. I think like in such this very unlikely relationship, like who would have known you would have ended up with Matisse, from, Jared and I have known him for a while, like, kind of blew our minds at the beginning. And that unlikeliness, it is material for doubt, yet actually there's this kind of alignment on all the levels where, I think you're both so inspired as seekers that there's this. So, interestingly enough, I listened, because, when I first heard the term, I was like, what's that? And the way the guy defined twin flames was different. It was that, twin flames are like a super attraction that come and they pretty much explode, trigger all of each other's trauma, are super codependent, and then leave each other. So, this brings up another question for me, which is like, what do you think about these kinds of terms being used in conversation? Twin flames, soulmates.
I think it's dangerous. I think it's really dangerous.
Well, that's where I was leading.
I heard that definition of twin flame, and I thought, oh, for sure, this is a twin flame relationship. In pretty much every relationship I had in my previous relationship. So before Matisse, Aaron and I had a beautiful, harmonious, deep relationship.
Yeah.
And everyone before that, it was what you're describing. And I think that possibly if I hadn't evolved to where I am now, Matisse and I would be in that, because we have had these intense, like, fuck, right? But because we're not in our trauma bodies when we're communicating, because we know how to meditate, because we can take responsibility for our feelings, because we're having so much sex that orgasmic energy is pushing a lot of energy and adrenaline out that isn't love, then we're able to stay connected. And we're both very independent people, but also completely can support one another. So there's that interdependency happening. And I've never heard the twin flame definition that I'm giving. It's my felt sense right now because of the vision I had after we made love. And I find a lot of my teachings, they're not replications of what someone else has said. And I've never taught about twin flames. Who knows, maybe it will come into the teachings now. It's my own felt sense. And of course, there may be echoes of the wisdom of the ages and other people who have said things. I mean, I think you're similar, Ava. It's this space of what is twin flame? Can we define it? I think it's going to be different for everyone. And I really just rely on my intuition, visions that I have, and felt sense of anything.
Yep. And that is very interesting that there's this idea of twin flames, that basically activates each other's trauma body, which brings so much material and so much passion and attachment, but you've met this twin flame and you're not in your trauma body. So you've got the fire, but without because you can get burnt a little bit, but you're not just like living and just being burnt continuously in that fire. So
yeah, that suffering, that's like,
yeah.
And we triggered each other's core wounds like motherfuckers, My core wound is abandonment, his core wound is enmeshment, right? So there's a bit of fear of commitment on his end, fear of losing love from my end, but we both worked on it and just were prepared to do the work. And because of the age difference between us, there's like 14 years between us. There was that as well. We're at different stages of our lives. So we really had to just let go of our past, our associations, and our identity and how we thought about things. We had to get out of the mind and trust the body, trust the heart, trust what was naturally evolving. And the love just kept deepening. And it's interesting because something that is similar to that twin flame, what's often said about it is, you can't say, like the first time we made love, we didn't leave each other's side for 3 weeks, right? We literally just couldn't. There was so much there to dive into. So there is that. I noticed that there's that thread of like going in really deep. But there's a beautiful Kahlil Gibran quote about the pillars of the temple, that you and I've discussed before, where the pillars they're there together, but they also stand apart. And I feel like him and I, naturally, we take our space, we can be alone, and then we come into togetherness. And there's this beautiful flow in that. And we also flow between parasympathetic and sympathetic without too much judgment of either. So he's not overly attached to everything having to be a certain way, and neither am I. We're both pretty good at going with the flow. So I think the potentiality of the trauma body to just create explosive arguments is definitely there. But because we're both quite mature and hold strong polarity with each other, that hasn't been an issue with us. Like, he is super present masculine and I'm super alive Shakti. So that polarity works really well in our favor for great sex and great communication. And then he also has a beautiful feminine, and I have a really strong masculine. And I think that the foursome is really important in any relationship. And that twin flame, now just as we're talking about it and I feel into it, that's another huge difference with Matisse, is that my guy is a full yes to his girl. His girl feels really safe with my guy. And then, of course, my girl and his guy get along great. Usually relationships, the gender selves are getting along quite well. And it's the conscious sexual selves or the unconscious selves, opposite gendered selves, that have an issue. So the foursome's good. And I think in a twin flame connection, the foursome needs to be good.
Can you explain how you feel into your guy and if it likes his girl? How do you feel into that?
Well, when he's in his emotional body, I'm not like, ew, Yeah. Sometimes when I'm with a guy and he goes into his emotional body, I'm just like, oh,
yeah, okay.
Really strong victim. There's not a lot of self-responsibility. There's not a capacity to be vulnerable, and there's a lot of blaming and shaming going on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There may be a little bit of that with his girl, but I pull him up and then straight away the communication shifts.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah. And he came to one of my retreats before we got together. We were friends, really, really good friends. And he came to one of my retreats, and I have one of these nights at Living Tantra Retreat where you really explore your conscious sexual self. You dress up in that, and then you dance. And his girl was so beautiful. I was just like, oh my God, I love her.
That's how you know.
Yeah. If you love their conscious sexual self, it's like all uphill from there.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. As you were explaining initially the twin flame, I was like, yeah, that I definitely feel that with Jared. And it's it's so, I mean, it's Jared and my relationship has been very challenging, very up and down, but amongst all of that, we're in the best we've ever been. I'm the proudest of both of us that I've ever been. And there is this, the flames are burning for each other, and for that remembering and for the seeking and in alignment. So I guess I've met mine as well. I don't know if there's one, but
Who knows?
and it hasn't been automatic, like almost like we were saying originally, like it really, there's so many people that you could be codependent with and could have that flame, but I think it's not automatic. It takes a lot of work in order for those twin flames to keep burning, in a sustainable way.
And I've watched and been part of your and Jared's journey, and it's been so beautiful. And I think both of you are committed to love, not just loving each other, but love itself. And that's so important, isn't it? That commitment is there. And a lot of people, it's hard to have that commitment because they don't know how to be with what arises in them and still stay. So I think that's the key. Can I be with what's here in me and let it burn without running, without fighting? Can we just be with each other in that fire?
Yeah, which is hard, right? Like we're designed to get away from that discomfort and not like, how do you function when you're in your trauma? Like there's everything telling us to get out of it so we can function properly. So yeah.
Well, I don't have that. I haven't had that since probably the last 4 years. There was a big transition for me when I turned 40. I went to India, and the typical kind of, oh wow, India. I had a massive awakening. I was actually in Ramana's ashram, and the umbilical cord to my mum cut, and it then became connected to Mother India, and I had this huge awakening into love. And from that time, this part that either wants to run or fight didn't control me anymore. And it's been a process, but with Matisse, I've never wanted to fight, I've never wanted to run. And I think that maturity, rather than it threatening him, inspires him. And it didn't take him long he was already naturally that way, but there was a bit of running from him at the beginning, and then we settled into this space of none of us going into those stress responses, which is fucking great, not to be controlled by those stress responses, right?
Totally. And I love that you said like your maturity inspired him, which that's how it works. If you really are mature and grounded, it is inspiring. Otherwise you're just talking about it and scolding people to be like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of women, they say to me, how can I get my man to change? And how can I get him on the path? I'm like,
bitch, you change.
Yeah, like you be such a fucking cool chick that's what's inspiring, that you're embodying it, not that you're telling him about it, that he can feel it and go, wow, I want that. I want more of that in my own life. Yeah.
100%. And I feel like I'm a testament to that in my relationship. Like when I was more in my, dysregulation, I was trying to control Jared into being what I wanted him to be. And then there was a point where I just let go of all the control, but now I'm in a place where I don't control and I inspire. A lot of work.
Yeah. And that's really a shift as well, isn't it? From a more masculine, outdated way of women doing relationship and into a more heart-centered. And I feel like part of our inspiration in our upcoming collaborations was, really connecting in that space. And I remember having a chat with you in the forest about Jared and certain things that may not be ideal in the relationship, but that you've kept that unconditional love, and how you've been able to do that. And that really inspired me. And I feel like we both have a lot of Shakti in different ways that are very complementary.
Yep. Yes, I agree. Okay, let's go to classical Tantra versus Neo-Tantra. What's the difference? And I feel like, because we've been doing work alongside each other in Perth for a long time, and I feel like there's been this kind of idea that you teach Neo-Tantra and I teach classical Tantra, which is like there's so many misunderstandings with that kind of viewpoint. And like for me, like I've studied Tantra in different ways with different teachers. You know, I studied at Agama, I studied at Hridaya, I've studied with Paul Muller-Ortega. Maybe you've heard of him from Blue Throat Yoga. So I've studied different tantric traditions, but each one of them has an idea about what Tantra is that comes from like a certain community or a certain lineage. But then a few years ago, I got more into like an academic look, you know, more like Christopher Wallace and the religious departments of universities, you know, and the way they describe Tantra. So what I would describe classical Tantra would be looking at the entire movement of Tantra in India between a certain period of time. And within that, there were many lineages of spirituality. But because at the time the religion was called Tantra, you know, there are so many totally different, you know, non-dual and dual, Shakti worshiping, Shiva worshiping,
White Tantra, Red
Tantra, Black Tantra, you know, householder, renunciate. So it's almost like now where we've got Hinduism and then we've got all of these different forms of Hinduism. So to say something like classical Tantra is, it doesn't really pick out one particular lineage. Like when most people, when they think about classical Tantra, they're like, oh, well, then it must be Kashmiri Shaivism, or it must be the Vijnana Bhairava, you know, that must be classical Tantra. But then that's still picking out one line in an entire body. So basically Tantra, the Tantric period was a period of India of different forms of spirituality. And I always describe it that it's like an upgrade of the spirituality that preceded it. So before that, you had a lot of classical yoga and, you know, of Patanjali, and then you also had different forms of Buddhism and other forms of ascetic practices and esoteric practices. And then they kind of evolved into the Tantric period. And then Neo-Tantra, so classical Tantra versus Neo-Tantra, you know, seeing a difficulty in distinguishing those. But then Neo-Tantra is it's a word that's being used to describe Tantra as it's being practiced today. And almost like you said, it's not going to be the same as what it was before. It's going to be a synthesis of what came before mixed in with what is relevant now for every different teacher. So even blanketing all of the tantric teachers now as Neo-Tantra, that's okay, as long as you understand that it's an entire field with many different lineages in it and many different practices and many different philosophies that can totally contradict each other, like dualistic and non-dualistic philosophies and householder and ascetic, you know, or renunciatory versions. So they are umbrella terms. And once again, it can be unhelpful. I wouldn't say dangerous in this case, but unhelpful to be calling one thing classical. And people sometimes just use those words to try to validate or diminish lineages when in and of themselves, they're alluding to something concrete that isn't actually there. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on that?
I mean, I feel like that I agree with everything that you said 100%. I think at the core of any Tantra that's real Tantra is meditation. And by meditation, I just mean that we're fully present to sensation, fully present to what's alive in us, and able to witness that and create enough safety for ourselves to stay with that. I think Tantra is life, whether it's classical Tantra, Neo-Tantra. For me, the difference between Tantra and anything else is that it's relating to it's like how we relate to God and goddess energy. Like classical tantra is also inclusive of deity worship, right? And these gods and goddesses that represent different aspects of ourselves. So how do we relate to God goddess energy and yantra and sacred geometry and meditation? How do we relate to sexuality within our own beings first, and then with someone else? How do we relate to life? And then the dance between all of that. So, you know, life is the all-encompassing part of it, because Tantra doesn't exclude anything. Every other spiritual tradition, it's like you have a practice and you're not allowed to do this or that as part of that practice. And to me, the reason that Tantra changed my life so much and why it's the tradition that I absolutely bow before is because I bow before life. I bow before this mystery that doesn't fucking exclude anything. And to me, anything that excludes sex isn't it, because we are sex. We were made from sex. We are the creative potential of the universe. So people think that Neo-Tantra is all about sex. No, it's not all about sex. It just doesn't exclude sex, because it recognizes that sex is also a beautiful space to worship the divine. Does it get over marketed because that's what brings money in? Of course. Is there too much emphasis on that part in a lot of workshops and retreats? Yes. Is it in the stuff that I run and you run? Absolutely fucking not. You know, sexuality is a tiny part of what I teach, but it's an important part. And I think a lot of the issues that are there in relationship and even in the world is that sex isn't a sacred space that we step into. It's something that we do. And what that means is it becomes this flesh and friction oriented activity, right, that is done behind closed doors, that's often educated from pornography. So all of this goes into shadow, and instead of holding their cocks, men are holding fucking guns, right, in the name of God. Instead of being able to serve as teachers, certain teachers who are meant to be there in service to love and truth are molesting children and students. I'm talking about priests and different teachers. It's a bigger conversation. But I think there's a real danger in not addressing all of life in any tradition. So Tantra is life. And part of life is the orgasmic potential of our birthright as beings who were created from sex. We're all sex on legs, you know, fucking celebrate that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like, you know, there was Tantra a long time ago. There is a kind of over-sexualized version of Tantra that we see now, because like you, exactly like you said, in the workshops, you're not hearing so much about meditation or like health or diet. You're hearing about sex. Like there's this emphasis. But I like this idea of Tantra that you've described. It's like, yeah, all of life and a synthesis of both of those paths. And like, I love the idea of this super tradition, you know, that is holistic and integrated and fully relevant, always evolving, you know, to be whatever is meaningful and relevant. And like, that's my whole thing, is what's functional, and whatever's functional is what's meaningful and relevant to whatever we need. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think where you and I really are allies and similar is that the nervous system has to be part of anything, because we live in a world that is so dissociated and distracted from the full presence of being here with the breath in our bodies. So I feel like not just in Tantra, but in any modality, anything that doesn't address the nervous system in some way and support people how to regulate their nervous systems is fundamentally flawed.
Yep, 100%. I feel like that's the cornerstone, especially when everything is, all the dysfunction is stacked on top of that, you know? So yeah, all of the healing is going to be stacked on top of that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Let's do a few more. So how to feel safe in open relationships?
I don't think the feminine ever feels safe in open relationships.
What about the masculine?
The masculine loves it. So
Oh.
I only had open relationships till I was 30. And no, I was 35 when I met my second husband. And fortunate for me, I did a lot of the engaging more than my partners did up until I was 30. And then I entered the Tantra world and they were also engaging. So I got to feel that. And I think that the masculine in all of us, the main drive is for freedom. You know, the masculine wants to be free, and love is a force. It's not so personal. And this is what I experience in my own life. And this is what I see in my clients and a lot of the crew that I was hanging out with at that time. And in the feminine, you know, love is definitely personal, and she wants full commitment and she wants to be fully chosen. It fucking kills her when her partner's with someone else. And so I think that open relationships work when someone's polarized more in their masculine and on a path of non-attachment. But when the feminine is leading, or the feminine is being paid a lot of attention to within our own beings, and we're in a relationship, she doesn't like it. You know, like anyone who's listening has experienced their partner wanting to have sex with someone else, probably, or thinking they might want to, or maybe you've even experienced them having sex with someone else. It hurts. It hurts the heart, you know. And imagining someone, your partner, being inside someone else, or going inside someone else, or having someone else inside them, of course that's difficult. It's hard to find safety in that. And you don't, it's like the relaxed state of the heart, I feel, is really much more easy to access when you're not in that kind of, oh wow, they're with someone, is there gonna be such a big connection with them and they're gonna leave me? In saying that, there are incredible gifts of open relating where you have to challenge those parts of you. And I'm grateful for open relationships and what they've given me in terms of burning through a lot of the attachment. So I think that if I was in an open relationship right now and Matisse had a few different lovers, or even one other lover, it would be hard for my nervous system to feel safe. Definitely. But if I was mainly in my masculine and I was also having other lovers and I was focused on work and meditation as a stillness practice, and then you know, I've had times in my life where when I'm really on purpose and I'm cranking out my practice, that it's been sweet.
Yeah, that's interesting to say that, you know, depending on where you are, if you're more in your kind of masculine or in your feminine, you feel affected in a different way. In my experience, it hasn't, because, you know, also done a lot of open relating, and has been different levels of challenging. But there's, you know, there's so many factors, you know, to me feeling safe. Definitely. I mean, one thing that I would say to answer the question would be like, how to feel safe in open relationships would be how to feel safe in anything. You need to be really clear about what you need. You need to communicate it. You need to recognize that boundaries are always fluid and always needing to be communicated. And if you're not feeling safe in 90% of your life, you're not going to feel safe in an open relationship. If you're feeling safe on every other level, you are more likely to. But there are some women that I would be jealous if Jared is with. And there's some women that he could marry them and I would be fine. You know, and I heard from David Data a long time ago about that difference between obligatory and like that optional and mandatory jealousy with women. There's some women that we wouldn't be jealous with, and actually biologically we would be more inclined to share our partner with them because it's actually going to improve our lives and help our family. But with some women, the chances are that they're going to, you know, you're worried that they're going to take your man away, then biologically you're going to feel that jealousy over. And I've definitely sensed that in myself. There's some women I wouldn't feel jealous over, and there's some that I would. having said that, Jared and I have been together a while, and there's a stability there, like we always say to each other, we're just, even if we were very attracted to someone else, we probably wouldn't even bother like going through, we're just slower in our relating, we don't have.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also a triple Scorpio, extremely jealous. Even when I was married for 10 years, I would still get totally jealous, and he wasn't going anywhere. I feel like the safety piece, here's a point of debate. Like when you say it's like safety with anything, I wouldn't agree with that. I think that open relating is one of the hardest areas to feel safe. I think there are ways to cultivate deeper safety, but how to feel safe in an open relationship when engagement is happening. I think if it's like, can we feel safe in situations where it's more like a three-way relationship? Like just say you and I were both sharing Matisse. I fucking love you. I think you would bring him a lot of expansion if he was to engage in deeper intimacy with you, which would then feed into our relationship. So I think when it's meaningful and there's a relationship between the women and there's love in the center of the triangle, then yeah, but typically when I think open relationship, it's like, okay, he has lovers, I have lovers. And we're getting into definitions again. So my feeling of open relationships is it's on for young and all, like we're open. You do your thing, I'll do my thing, and it's open, we're completely free. So how to feel safe in that? Ooh, I would say you cannot feel safe in that. How to feel safe in more of what you're saying, where there's not a lot of engagement. You would only really engage if it was super meaningful and it felt right, and you were into the chick that you trusted the woman that he was engaging with. So there is a lot to it. I will say this. I've been doing private sessions for over a decade, and every woman that I work with who's okay with an open relationship when she starts sessions with me, by sometimes the first session, definitely after the third or fourth, she's not okay at all. When she really goes into her emotional body and goes through the layers and we contact the 10 feminine, it's always, I want to be fully chosen. Yeah. I've never come across a woman where it's not that. So yeah.
I know that feeling.
That's my take on it.
Definitely at the beginning of Jared and my relationship, all I wanted was open relating. And then it was like, no, that's not what I want at all, and we went into that more monogamous place, and then, open back up again, later. So, yeah, I feel like it's just so complicated. It's like you said, if it's a triangle, depending on who it's with, depending on how you are in your life in any day, how the communication is going, how it starts to evolve, how the different relationship evolves, what trauma gets triggered. But like you said, having done that so much, it really has brought so much to the surface to be burnt and worked through. That does make it safer.
Definitely. And I like what you said about the communication aspect, like how important it is to communicate needs and boundaries. And yeah, and it's also, it can change anytime, right? I think it's whatever blows your hair back. It's going to be different depending on what you're experiencing. I definitely feel like open relationships work better for me if I'm in a relationship where all my needs aren't met by that particular person. So, I want a king, I want a warrior, I want a magician, I want father energy, I want everything in my man. So I have all of those archetypes with Matisse. But in the past, there were different archetypes that weren't as strong. And then I would choose lovers who had that archetype. So, wholeness in the person that I'm with. And then obviously that's a reflection of my own wholeness. I think the more whole two people are, the less of a need there is to engage, and the more you would only be engaging in those times that we're speaking about, where it's really meaningful. There's a lot of discernment, and it's going to serve love and truth in some way. It's serving the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope this has given some ideas and like things to think about, because there are just so many things to think about. Like, I'd feel most safe in a relationship if Jared was to be with someone that I could say, no, this needs to end at any time.
Uh-huh.
You know, even if I'm not going to really probably exercise that power because there's another woman on the other end of that, I need to know certain things, and it'll completely depend on which woman it is. So
Yeah, that's
lots to
kind of
think
one of
about.
the things I don't like that evolves from open relating, where we end up controlling to create safety, right? So is it safe in and of itself? No, fuck no. And what I found in my own relationship and observing others is there's so much talking. It's like no one's actually fucking anyone. It's like we've just spent a week processing the possibility of you being with her or him.
Yeah.
Oh,
100%.
Like, in the bigger scheme of things, I want to put my energy towards what's actually here and now between us. And in the sacred container of relating, so much comes up. But I am open to open relating, if that's there.
Oh, we should push this and report back, because it's been a while. There's been a few, things over the past few years, but it's been a while since there's been a relationship on the other end. So yeah, it's hard to speak. It's hard to speak to that one a little bit more. I still stand by what I was saying, that it's the way that you feel safe in anything, is like in terms of, you need to be able to check in. There needs to be an inner communication and an outer communication, a feeling of alignment. I agree that you'll never feel totally safe, and there's just you're up against your edge,
Yeah. I see what you're saying. It's like how we do anything is how we do everything, right? That quote has always stood out in my head. Yeah, and you do need that check-in and attunement for sure when you're saying it from that perspective. Yeah. And then this particular situation is just a lot harder to feel safe in than other situations, but the way that we find the tools that we use to find that safety are the same. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, let's end it with pros and cons of your contrasting teaching styles, which I thought was a bit of a hard one. Like, we've been apart for a couple of years. You're almost 2 years in Bali. Then prior to that, our styles have changed a little bit. Mine has definitely changed a lot. Both of ours have matured, as it grows year on year. So I kind of found it, like, I tune into your podcast a lot. I love the things that you share and say. And I love who you are, the way that you're showing up. Although when I first met you, I was like, this bitch is crazy. Yeah. And obviously was obsessed with you and wanted you around all the time. But I was like, this woman is wild. And I think, you've described it before, the contrast, you think, in our teaching style. So I think that kind of covers the whole, my, original views of you. But yeah, I found it a little bit hard to think about an answer. So I thought I'd start by asking you, what do you think is our different, like, what do you think the difference between our teaching styles is, if any?
I feel like yours is more structured and has more rules to it, right? Which creates a lot of safety, and there's less risk, right? I feel like my approach is, I tend to not have a lot of structure, and I like to just flow with the naturalness of what I'm feeling into in the space and support others to do the same. Safety is definitely important to both of us, though, and freedom is definitely important to both of us. So I feel like we both hold the pillars of safety and freedom, but maybe mine veers more towards freedom. I would never stop anyone from expressing or doing anything that's held in my container other than leaving the space, right?
You wouldn't accept that?
Well, I don't, if I'm holding a retreat, one of the agreements is don't leave the space, right? and no drugs or alcohol while you're here. So I feel like you have this beautiful stillness within you that you transmit, and that is more on the vertical line. And you also have this amazing aliveness, but maybe you lead more from the vertical stillness point. Whereas I have that, but then I have a very strong horizontal that is very alive and wild, as you say. And I lead more from that. So I think we are very, very similar, and we lead from a different space. And maybe mine can be more described as a Shakti dominated field. You know, there's a lot of Shakti in all of my spaces, and there's a lot of Shakti in yours as well. And there's a lot of Shiva in yours, and there's a lot of Shiva in mine as well. But where are we leading from? I think that's more what it's about.
That is amazing, the way that you have identified that in such a, in such a kind way. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it was kind, but it also, I feel like you hit the nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
I think about, from what I understand from your teaching, because we both value, like, you said we're allies, because right at the heart of our teaching, we need to heal our nervous system, because everything is like coming out of that. And what I understand, based on what you just said, from your side, from your style, teaching style, there's this emphasis on getting rid of that extra adrenaline in the system, like releasing this, like discharging all of this pent up energy that's dysregulating our system. And then from my side, it's like creating safety, because the lack of safety is dysregulating the system. And that's what I'm like, I don't know if I would say safety is like at the very pillar of it. Like, for me, I guess it's not so much safety, but more like attunement. Like, but attunement to create a sense of safety so that the nervous system will heal itself. Where you're potentially more like, the priority is at getting rid of, discharging that excess energy so that the nervous system can heal itself. So it's both about creating an optimal condition for the nervous system to heal itself. But, because, my kind of questioning of yours would be that, well, what about the other nervous systems around that your expression of freedom is going to undermine their feeling of safety? But if the entire container is premised around everyone needs to be expressing freedom, then one person expressing freedom, other person doesn't feel safe. As long as they are then going to express their safety, everyone's going to be expressing their freedom.
Okay. I'm all about, can we be with what's arising in us and allow that, even if someone else is creating more adrenaline in the body than would be there if I was just on my own, right? So in a space, of course, like in a workshop, you could be in a meditation, for instance, right? And there's a situation that the mind is spinning, and the meditative approach that I take and you take is, what's the felt sense of that? Can you be with the sensations that arise? And instead of like running off with the narrative of the mind, underneath that narrative are sensations, right? Our feelings. Can you tune into that? And we can take the more Shiva approach or Vedanta approach or non-dual approach of just witnessing, or as we're having that felt sense, as we're tuning into sensation, we can give it some breath, sound, and movement, not to get rid of it, but to actually just free it, give it the freedom of expression and make it not wrong. So if someone's sitting next to me and the energy I'm feeling is, and I'm angry, and the person next to me is uncomfortable with anger, or it's distracting them from their own process, to me, it's like, can you be with that? Can you be with what's arising in you as someone else is disturbing your process? because that's the entrainment for relationship, right? Part of the entrainment for relationship. And then after we've done that, then come back to the silence, nurture the body, see if there's some new beliefs that want to come into the body. Pre-Tantra, I was brought up by an esoteric wizard. My dad taught meditation and personal development and EFT, and it was all about continence and stillness and just staying and witnessing. And I ended up with cervical cancer. And I had to look at why my feminine center now had cancer. And what I arrived at was that the dis-ease in my emotional body that I wasn't discharging had duplicated, those cells had duplicated. And I could see it and I could feel it. And part of my healing journey was learning how to, instead of pushing everything down and being the spiritual girl, the love and light girl, which I definitely was, Tantra. I used to have like 2 explosions a year and that was it. They were fucking huge explosions though. Ran one boyfriend over with my car.
Whoa.
Like bad stuff, So I think that your approach is 10 out of 10. I think my approach is 10 out of 10. I think people need both. And the reason I love working with you so much and collaborating with you and hanging with you is because we have a beautiful polarity. I love your fucking Shiva. I love your continence. I love your stillness, and you love my aliveness and my free expression. So, there would be no point in collaborating if we were exactly the same. But I feel like at the core of both of us is a vibration of allowance. We have never turned against each other. There's never been funny energy between us. Some people, you just feel that funny energy. We're just authentic and honest and beautiful with one another. And I think that's to people who have the gift of allowing whatever is coming up in their own systems and not having to compete or project. And there is a power to that. There's a magic in any sisterhood that has that at its core. So yeah.
Oh, it's just a heaven. I put up a post the other day about like that, exactly like you said, just this authentic, relaxed, loving connection with a sister. It's just everything. It just totally fills you up. But in a way, it's so unassuming. It's in a way you don't realize, but you're fully charged up from that. And I feel like it's just community. It's that feeling of being connected, accepted, welcomed. And that's so, so powerful. So yeah, I also love our relationship very much.
And what I'm excited about in working with you is really exposing my network to your tools around parasympathetic state and how to regulate the nervous system. And then I'm excited to be exposed to your network. And I think that we're similar enough that there's not a conflict in our teachings, but different enough that they're going to get different beautiful teachings from both of us.
Totally. I feel like there's 2 big pieces that are going to come together because, like you said, they're different approaches.
With allowing at the core. Let's allow what's there. Let's not escape from what's there. Let's touch it.
Totally. Yeah. How we touch into it is in that different way, I guess yours is more express and mine is more tune in.
Yeah.
Like get quiet with it.
Yeah.
And like really listen and like following it in with awareness, where yours is like follow it through with energy kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I actually think, pros and cons of the contrasting teaching styles. I actually think that at any one point, your nervous system is going to ask for one of those ways. And if you only know express and release, if you only know awareness and getting tuned in and stillness, and your system is asking you for the other one, and you don't know the signal of which one is the exact one, you're actually re-traumatizing yourself. You're not giving your system what it needs.
Absolutely.
If you're not giving your system exactly what it needs in any moment, you're giving it not what it needs, and then that is it's a dysfunctional, movement that you're making. So, having access to like exposing my students and my network to really the fullness of all of the tools that you offer, like you need to practice those in a formal way so that you know what it feels like when it unlocks that energy. And you need to practice stillness and the fullness of those practices to know what it feels like when it unlocks that energy, because both of them will unlock that energy. But you can't just be like, oh, I should do meditation, or I should do expression, or I should do some embodiment.
What is this calling for? And I definitely incorporate meditation and stillness, and you definitely incorporate expression. It's just not what you lead with, right? And then of course there's the third way, which we haven't discussed yet, which is orgasmic energy. And it's too much to talk, we're already done for this podcast, but orgasmic energy is one of the most beautiful ways to release trauma. When love is present, everything that's not love shows up. And when we're stepping into lovemaking as a sacred space that is authentic, that is real, then wow, if we're making love as a meditation and we're aware of sensation and we're tuning in, tears come sometimes, rage comes sometimes, as well as bliss, as well as ecstasy. And orgasmic energy has this amazing potential to push trauma out, help us remember God, support us to track sensation if there's not the agenda to have an explosive 7-second, 14-second sneeze, genital sneeze. So part of my teachings, and I don't know if you teach this actually, Ava, teach about orgasmic energy and sexuality.
I don't teach about sex very much at all at the moment.
Okay, so that's the other way that we're going to complement each other. And I think you're the sexiest woman alive, and I'm really excited to have you at my events and the wholeness experience. You're going to bring that element into it, and I feel like you're going to bring out in me some of my stillness practices more and connecting in with that more, and I'm going to support you to connect in with that sexuality piece more, because we both have both so strong.
Yes.
But favoring others. So I can't wait to get sexy with you and sexy with the women at the wholeness experience and at the beckoning. And yes, it's exciting.
Okay, I know we're like so over time, but if someone is coming to this podcast brand new, they're like, what? Orgasmic energy, something special with the sexual experience, stepping into a sexual space instead of doing it. Where do you have a course on that? Like, where do people find out about that?
Well, tune into Embodied Awakening social media. I do like short stories every day, and there's lots of posts about this material. There's podcasts, free blogs. You and I both educators. I have so much written material. And then if you wanted to take it further, I have an online course called Sacred Sexuality that really dives into all of this. And the wholeness experience, our one-day event, we're going to be addressing that. And at the beckoning, that's part of what I'll be bringing through. And really, it's just reframing sexuality out of the framework of either religion, which is all about abstinence, pornography, which is all about flesh and friction, into this other path where, wow, what if making love is a meditative act? And that the basis of that meditation is tuning to ourselves, to each other, bringing energy, breath, sound, and movement into this sacred container so that we can release what no longer serves and remember the love that we are.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, you're describing the philosophy, but I really think people need the training around it. So I'm happy to hear that there is a specific course that addresses that. And then you also run Fundamentals of Tantra, which is like a weekend workshop, which couples, that's good for couples.
And the next one, the Margaret River one, sold out, but then the one after that is in June in Perth.
Oh, good.
And the Sacred Sexuality online course, it's really in depth, like all my online courses are. There's like 150-page manual. There's guided meditations, there's videos, there's demonstrations with me and my partner at the time. So you're really getting the whole kit and caboodle.
That sounds amazing. They were going to say a downfall of that. That's the best. That's exactly what. Yeah.
You can. I'll give it to you as a gift, and you can tell me if you like.
Amazing. Perfect.
It can be a wedding gift for the wedding that didn't happen this weekend.
This weekend, exactly. Can you give just a little bit of a description about our upcoming event, Wholeness Experience?
So first and foremost, I think any event, the main vibration of it is going to be the vibration from which it was created from. And I feel like the vibration that it was created from was our sisterhood. So there's going to be a lot of connecting women together and feeling the power and magic of the sisterhood. And we're going to breathe together and do some yoga flow together with you at the start, which I always love being guided by you. You're such a beautiful guide and facilitator. I hate it when someone's guiding me into my body and they just sound like a robot. Your voice is so just yummy. And I love everything you say. And then I'm going to lead the discourse, but Ava will come in and put her 2 bobs in. And we're just going to check out, like, what does it mean to be whole? Because so many of us women, we're looking for completion through relationship, or we're over obsessing about work as a way to feel complete. So as women, how can we feel whole? And generally speaking, it's by not denying the light or the dark. It's about not denying the silence or the aliveness. It's about marrying our masculine and feminine, marrying our dark and our light. It's about feeling the pulse of something greater than the mind, where we can really trust our hearts, we can trust our wombs, we can trust our sensuality. So you're going to be getting lots of teachings around how to integrate the different aspects of your being, including the archetypes. So often women are running primarily in one archetype, either mother, priestess, warrior, or which one am I missing?
Seductress?
Lover, mother, priestess, warrior, and then there's queen. And the queen holds all of them. And the seductress, which is part of the lover, she's beautiful. And there's so much unhealthy seductress relationship energy in the sisterhood, which creates a lot of competition. So we're going to look at what is the healthy seductress energy and what does it mean to really balance our lover energy with, the sensation and connection to the earth and connection to loved ones and relationship, with warrior energy, who's determined to be in truth and has the courage to really, really put the time that it takes into the legacy to leave on the planet. And then there's the priestess, the creatrix, the one who's in touch with what's beyond this 3D reality. And mother of unconditional love and nurturing. So when we have all of this, we have our queendom. And so we're going to get a taste of all of these different archetypes. And then we're going to end with an amazing temple with Ava, where she teaches us how to really harness our seductress energy in a healthy way that isn't hooking anyone in, but that's expressing from the aliveness of our being, the erotic pulse of our sensuality. And this day is also a taster for the 1-week retreat, the Beckoning, which is happening in Denmark in May, that Ava's also collaborating with me on. We're gonna have basically that day over 7 days, but specific to each archetype. So it's going to be completely and insanely transformative. And we're all going to be just sharing our wisdom and our jewels with each other in that circle of sisters.
Yeah. I'm really excited for Wholeness because it's going to be, it's a 5-hour kind of like mini 1-day women's retreat. And I've done a couple of women's retreats. I've done many, many women's retreats before. And it's based around this kind of sensual movement piece and like connecting to and then expressing our erotic nature, which has just blown my life apart. Like in terms of my relationship, my connection to my body, my emotions. So when we do those 1-day retreats, they are just so amazing. And then to actually get that for 7 whole days in the, at the Cove in Denmark, us facilitating temple nights every single night, an embodied meditation flow in the morning. Like if you've kind of gotten a feel of what Chantelle and I offer in terms of, the horizontal, the vertical, the wholeness piece, that retreat is actually going to be just incredible. So that one is for women only. And of course, if you listen to this podcast, you know all about my silent meditation retreats, but I will pop the link.
Happening straight after the Beckoning.
Oh yeah, straight after.
Cool.
which I'm like, set those women loose after the beckoning. Do not send them into the silent retreat.
Some will be ready. Some will want that.
Be ready. So I'll post all the links for that, at the bottom of the podcast. And if you're listening on Embodied Awakening podcast, then we'll have the links there as well. But yeah, you've gotten a taste of what both of us, have to say and what we offer. And I'm sure Shannon and I would love to do another episode. So if you've got questions or you think there's something you want to pick apart from any of the things that we've shared, then just let us know. Always send us a message on our socials or via email. We're happy to hear from you. And anything else you want to say to close?
That I love you so
I love you so much.
And I can't wait to see you tomorrow.
We're going camping together on the weekend again. So
and you're
better. So that's good too.
I love you, babe. Thanks for having me on your podcast, baby.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Functional Spirituality Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe by pressing the plus button on iTunes or the following button on Spotify. This is going to ensure that this resource is available and top of mind when you most need it. So please subscribe now.